morning and welcome to you all, whether you are following us online, and thanks for joining us, or here with us in the room this morning. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this event on conservation agriculture, organized by ECAF, the European Conservation Agriculture Federation. We are supported today in our event by the Spanish Ministry for Agriculture and the Spanish presidency of the Council of the EU. And we'd also like to thank Bayer, who's our sponsor for this event. Now, together this morning, we will look how we can improve biodiversity, an absolutely essential element, of course, of the agricultural world and of the agricultural policy. And how can we improve biodiversity in the overall agricultural systems? I'd like to introduce the event by just pointing out that this morning we're going to unveil a report that is on the verge of being published by ECAF. So you will hear more in a few minutes about the main conclusions and the work carried out by the ECAF teams and all the scientists and experts who contributed to the report. But also, you will have the opportunity to discuss with a panel of experts who will be joining me on stage in a little while. You will be able to hear more about their experience. They will share with us what they have been doing, either in various parts of the world or in various specific fields, such as soils, for instance, how they are implementing the best possible policies to improve and protect biodiversity. You will also have the opportunity to ask questions. So if you're here in the room with us, obviously, just raise your hand and I'll give you the floor. But if you are following us online, you're very welcome to send your questions to our experts via the chat function of the platform. So please feel free to do so. You can already send your questions during the discussion, during the panel discussion, so that when the panel discussion closes and we open for Q&A, we already have your questions lined up and our experts will be happy to answer. Now, no point for any further ado. And I'd like to invite our first speaker to set the scene this morning. So please welcome Julio Roman Vasquez, who is project coordinator at ECAF. Good morning, Julio. Please.
Well? Yeah, okay. Okay, good morning. Thank you. My name is Julio Roman. I'm project coordinator of the European Conservation Agriculture Federation. And well, I would like to introduce briefly what's ECAF, what's the European Conservation Agriculture Federation. ECAF is a non-profit association founded in 1999. And our aim is to promote all issues related to the conservation and enhancement of agricultural soil health and biodiversity in the context of sustainable agriculture based on the three principles of conservation agriculture. Today, we need to launch the report entitled Conservation Agriculture Moving Towards the Preservation and Improvement of Biodiversity in Agroecosystems, which aims to showcase the benefits that the adoption of conservation agriculture brings to agricultural ecosystems in terms of biodiversity, conservation, and enhancement. We really thought that this report will provide very useful information and knowledge for EU policymakers, researchers, and other stakeholders to engage in discussions and knowledge sharing sessions on the intersection of conservation agriculture and biodiversity. And the question is, how does conservation agriculture practices promote the preservation of biodiversity for the future generations? Well, this question encapsulates the core focus of these events, and it can invite you to explore the benefits of conservation agriculture in transforming agricultural practices for the dual purpose of ensuring sustainability and conservation of biodiversity. After the presentation of this report by Professor González, Secretary General of ECAF, Pending discussion will address the impact of conservation agriculture on agricultural ecosystems, policy implications, technological innovation, and the challenges of the future of European agriculture. I would like to thank on behalf of ECAF all people involved in the elaboration of the report. I think it's a very nice report. And well, I invite all of you to discuss about this report. So I'm sure it will be a nice experience and knowledge to make this discussion fruitful for all of you. Thank you again. Well, let's start with the presentation. Video.
Okay.
Thank you very much, everybody, for being here today. Thank you to those at home. And as Julio has mentioned, we are going to talk about conservation agriculture. We are going to talk about biodiversity, and we are going to talk about the future and how can we help farmers perform better in terms of soil conservation, biodiversity.
Emilio, I'm sorry, I'm told people online don't hear us very well. So if you can take one of those just to be on the safe side.
Okay, that's good. So I would like to start with this disclaimer because we have had the chance and the opportunity to have the collaboration of Bayer. So the study presented today has been co-sponsored by Bayer and ECAF, but ECAF declares no conflict of interest. Bayer had no role in the design of the study, the collection, analysis, or interpretation of the data you are going to see, or in the writing of the report, or in the decision to publish the results. Having said that, we believe that it's very important to have this kind of transparent collaborations with the private and public institutions to provide the society with I would say, with relevant results on scientific studies. Let's start about talking about something that we all agree about, that we need to restore our agricultural habitats. There are worldwide European studies alerting that biodiversity soil is a big problem, that degradation is of this element is having negative impact on agricultural production and other natural resources in our planet. And the future of agriculture must be based on improved systems that would help farmer to perform better. The European Union has created a set of regulatory framework like the new Common Agriculture Policy, strategies like the Farm to Fork and biodiversity that are key to the consecution of the objectives of the Green Deal. We know that some of the objectives in those strategies are going to make farming a tough practice and a tough job in Europe, because there are, I would say, very ambitious objectives in the reduction of inputs, of the use of inputs, and other objectives that, well, we see and we are conscious that farmers need help to achieve those objectives. Conservation agriculture is presented as a good tool, a good system to help farmers perform better in this sense, to achieve the European Green Deal objectives whilst having a productive system in place, because we need to secure food production in our continent. The principles of conservation agriculture, as we understand them, we are very much aligned with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. The principles are simple, are those three you see here in the screen. The first one is continuous, no or minimum mechanical soil disturbance. Second one is leaving a permanent soil cover on the topsoil. And the third one is perform crop rotations and diversification. Those three principles can be adapted to local conditions. And in fact, they are adapted because we have conservation agriculture in the Northern European countries, in Southern European countries, but also in America, in Asia, in Africa. So it's a system that has been successfully adapted by farmers and by technicians and researchers in worldwide. A current figure about from FAO is about 220 million hectares worldwide are under this system. But we must be aware that those principles should be performed concomitantly. I mean, at the same time. We cannot say I'm doing no-till and with this I'm doing conservation agriculture. I must think on the three principles. The adaptation to can be done to annual and woody crops. In annual crops, the practices, as I mentioned before, is no-till is the most well-known and well-recognized. But we can also perform minimum soil disturbance strip seeding. Crop diversification it's also a must. Whereas in woody crops, ground covers between the tree lines is what we do in conservation agriculture. We basically adapt our system to our soil's conditions instead of plowing the soil to produce an easy seed bed to a conventional seeder. We do need technology. We do need machines. We do need input to control weeds, and we do use them wisely and in a judicious way. In this sense, conservation agriculture machines are performing, like you see in this picture, sometimes like this. It's like if you pass a knife over the soil. In some other cases, we may create a little bit higher disturbance, but in any case, we are not plowing the whole field. We can find conservation agriculture examples in many European countries. I'm going to show you some pictures of central, north, south, east, west European countries that have adapted conservation agriculture. And you see that you can see many different types of crops. You have seen cereals like wheat, barley. We have seen also we can see cotton, sunflower, beans, and in some of these adaptations, we have counted with the support of the European Commission through the LIFE program. In fact, now ECAF is involved in 2 LIFE projects based on the development of conservation agriculture. For perennial crops, those are pictures of olive trees, almond trees, orange trees, but we also have pear trees, apple trees with these green strips in between the trees. That's conservation agriculture. That's covers, protect the soil, and also improve our habitats for the fauna in the soil and above ground, as we will see later. The European Commission since long has informed us about the essentiality of soils as important ecosystems in our land. You see here, this is from 2014, what's in a handful of soil. You see there is a lot of life. There is a lot of life, and we can find a lot of different species, but not all soils are managed on the same way and can produce the same benefits. On the right-hand side, you see well-managed soil with good porosity, you see roots here. It's a good structure in here. Conversely, on the left-hand side, you see a compacted soil where life is going to be more difficult to develop. I come from a farming area in Spain, in the south of Spain. My family comes from a small village in the north of Córdoba province, and I remember when I was a child, we used to see more birds around in the farms, and if we don't see birds, it's not because it's not by chance. It's because if you see here the terrestrial food chain, is because we are missing parts of the key elements in this food chain or food trophic chain. And all starts in the soil. If we manage soils properly, we will provide primary consumers with what they need to reproduce and develop, and that will have a good impact on the secondary ones and of course on the tertiary ones, which are sometimes the more visible to people. And of course, how we treat our soils is key to the biodiversity inside them. Below ground is not that evident, but if we had, well, this is credit to Friedrich Tebrige, if we had an easy experiment on counting earthworms, and I wouldn't talk much about that because we have here Marie Bart, who she's an expert on this. But you see how conservation agriculture in the medium and long term improves the biodiversity below the ground. It will have a later impact on the above ground biodiversity, which is what we normally see. About the report that you can already download from the website of ECAF, the contribution of conservation agriculture to the improvement of biodiversity has been demonstrated. You will find, if I'm not wrong, we participated 8 authors, and we have produced 11 pages of references, over 100 references, talking about biodiversity, conservation agriculture, biodiversity in agriculture as a whole. And you see that soil fauna is directly benefited from the lack of tillage and the implementation of soil cover and the diversification of crops. In some of the studies, we have found differences or different information for no-till and for ground covers. No-till is for annual crops, ground cover for permanent woody crops. And you see that in all cases, in most of the cases, we have found quite significant increase in this, for instance, in soil mites, in nematodes, but also in springtails multiplied by 10 times more individuals in conservation agriculture. And those are essential to create a good soil structure. They consume, they eat the crop residues, and they help produce a good soil structure, just like earthworms. Sometimes we are asked by farmers, if I don't plow my field anymore, how the good aeration, how the air will flow inside? Well, earthworms are creating biopores, channels, and they are, in fact, they are doing a better job than the plow inside the soil, and they are also helping to create soil structure. If we talk about the fauna above the soil, the Fijian one, we also find a higher number of individuals in the conservation agriculture fields. According to the revised studies, ants, earwings, beetles, spiders, which are sometimes predators, they are also favored by the implementation of conservation agriculture. Basically, it's because of the crop residues on topsoil and also because of the lack of tillage in conservation agriculture fields. Also, if we see, compared to that, what is being found in the tillage-based agriculture is that especially the reduction of wild bees and other insects that nest in the ground, or the part of their life they pass it inside the soil. So if we disturb the soil, especially in intensive way, we will have a negative impact on these individuals, on these insects. And we've seen the reduction is basically because of that. Conservation agriculture also improves a small mammal in our farms, which sometimes are perceived as farmers as a problem. And in fact, they are. If we have a lot of rodents, they can cause yield reduction and they can create problems. But we should also take into account that rodents eat weed seeds, and that's also helping us to reduce the weed problems in the coming seasons. And we should not forget that conservation agriculture favors a new pest-predator balance. There is a lot of conservation agriculture in some countries. In Europe, especially, we have in the south, in Spain, we have more and more conservation agriculture, and I can tell you rodents are not a big problem. And it's because of the next slide, because we are also favoring the population of birds that eat rodents. So it's again the trophic change and the trophic, the food web that it's improved in conservation agriculture. Bird species are increased by 30%, and density, which is also very, very much important, it's multiplied by 3. The increase of nests in conservation agriculture fields, it's a reality, especially in summertime. Some of the bird species nest in the crop residues, and if we don't plow those residues, if we don't plow those fields, the nest and the birds will be able to grow and to become adults. So conservation agriculture has also a very positive impact, on bird population and density. Systems are also interesting to be compared, and this is from a study from Northern European country, from Denmark, where of course we all have organic farming as a positive system, but if you see the bird density found in conservation agriculture is even better. So that's also important to say that the conservation agriculture is performing at top level with regards to avifauna biodiversity in European cropland. Just to finalize, and won't take much more time, just to remind that agriculture ecosystems are very important for the European land. Farmers are managing those ecosystems, and we need to work close with farmers, and that's what ECAF is doing, and the university, especially the University of Cordoba, where I come from, it's doing, because for the last 13 years we've been running live projects always close to farmers. We need to produce and we need to help farmers, and we need to understand and learn from farmers how is the best way to manage the agricultural ecosystems, because farmers in fact are the ones that will make the change. We can provide them with the information, but if they don't see the benefits of a new system, it will be difficult for them to embrace them. And we must be sure that the conservation agriculture will help the European authorities and the national and the member states to reach and to fulfill the objectives, ambitious objectives, I would say, in the with regards to climate change mitigation, biodiversity, and food safety and crop production. So with this, I finalize my presentation. Thank you very much for listening from here and home. And you can already download the report. It's available in ECAF website and also through that QR. Thank you very much, and I will look forward for the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Emilio. You can keep your mic actually and take a seat, because you're going to be joining us for the upcoming panel, any seat you like. And I'm now going to move on to introducing our contributors, our experts for this particular panel. So we'll dig a little bit deeper into many elements that have been mentioned by Emilio throughout the presentation of the report. And we'll see together how conservation agriculture can really play a driving role in sustainable agriculture practices, and of course with a view to preserving biodiversity. So I'd like to welcome our panel speakers, Esperanza Orellana Praleda, who's the Director General of Agricultural Productions and Markets at the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Foods in Spain. Please, Esperanza, come and join us. Professor John Crawford from the University of Glasgow. He's an expert on soil health and conservation and regenerative agriculture. Good morning to you. And Dr. Marie Bartz, who is an expert on biodiversity and conservation agriculture. She's a member of the Brazilian No-Till System Farmers Federation, and she's also from the Municipal Center of Culture and Development of Idania Nova in Brazil. So quite a broad range of experts, both geographically and in terms of backgrounds with us this morning. Welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us. So I think I'm going to start with you, Emilio, because you've really given us a lot of food for thought with the overview of the ECAF report. And you're an expert on conservation agriculture. So what do you think the main challenges, but also the main opportunities are in implementing conservation agriculture practices in various EU regions, particularly when it comes to biodiversity protection? I mean, you already gave us some elements in the report, but, you know, challenges and opportunities?
Well, the challenge, I think, it's to adapt to local conditions the principles of conservation agriculture. We know the principles are working and are have been adapted to, for instance, permanent frost soils in Canada, in arid conditions in Australia. So the question is, how can we best adapt those principles to local practices that can be performed by farmers? The benefits of adapting those principles are clear, and I think we have a big challenge with regards to biodiversity as a whole in European cropland, but we also need to have a holistic view on biodiversity, but soil, water management, climate change mitigation and adaptation. So if we just focus on one element, we might be missing part of the big picture that we need to answer to. So I think that's the key.
Thank you. So yeah, looking at the big picture, Esperanza, the Green Deal, the European Green Deal has already been mentioned a couple of times, and I think is going to be mentioned throughout the whole event. But we know that it aims to achieve healthy soils, among other things, by 2050. That's clearly linked to better biodiversity. So can you explain to us how, in your view, conservation agriculture aligns with this particular target and how we can help reach it? And then I'll have a follow-up question about the very specific example of Spain, but maybe we can start with this part.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to the European Federation of Conservation Agriculture for inviting the ministry to share this time with you. And I would like to say, first of all, that the study that has been made by the European Federation is a really, really very valuable tool to, to have a wider view of what represents conservation agriculture, because we knew many decades ago the benefits of this kind of agriculture, for reducing emissions, to improve carbon sinks, or to avoid or reduce soils losses and desertification. But now we have this new picture about what is biodiversity, and I think it's another piece of this, another element of this package that is the Green Deal, because the Green Deal, I think, is a package, and it has been seen like that, not by individual parts, but together. So I think these practices of conservation agriculture means, the core of the Green Deal, because we are talking about all these things, reducing emissions. We have to reduce 55% of emissions of GHG before 2030. So we need agriculture, conservation agriculture. We need to increase carbon sinks in our land We need an efficient and productive agriculture at the same time, a more resilient agriculture, because we have to feed a population that is increasing. We need to improve biodiversity. We have seen Professor Emilio has shown us how it's really improved biodiversity. So I think we have now the elements of a better picture of what it can be done for these special targets of the Green Deal. But I think now we have to, to sell, the other benefits of this type of agriculture. And I would like to give you some figures because they are in the last study of the GRC, the Joint Research Center of the Commission, that estimates that the 13% of the European soils are suffering high levels of erosion, and it has a cost of 1.3 billion euros of productivity every year. So in economical terms, it's really, really important. And for us, for our ministry, for policymakers, I think we have to keep in mind the three pillars of sustainability. Of course, the environment sustainability, economical sustainability, and social sustainability. So I think these kind of practices can contribute to all of them.
Thank you. And I'm going to stay with you because, as I said, I have a very specific question about Spain. As we have already heard from Emilio, conservation agriculture is quite widespread throughout Spain. So could you maybe elaborate a little on the various measures and incentives that Spain is implementing in order to integrate conservation agriculture into its national policies, and also maybe what what can be done to bolster the EU's efforts with the same approach in mind?
Of course. When we started to design our CAP strategic plan, of course, we have first of all, we have to analyze our needs. And I want to thank, to the Spanish Conservation Agriculture Association, because they advise us, they help us very, very strongly. And I would thank publicly this help. And as I said, we have in mind the three pillars of sustainability, never one alone. We must keep a balance. So having this in mind, of course, we had to introduce conservation agriculture, in our box of tools. Because we have objective data about our level of erosion, loss of soil, loss of organic material, loss of biodiversity, the necessity of reduce the emissions of GHG and the emissions of pollutants, all these things we had then in mind. And so we had a new instrument that were the eco schemes in the CIP. This new tool that allow us to improve to farmers, to make them make this transition, this ecological transition, in a quite comfortable way. So, of course, we focused on carbon farming generally, not only in agriculture, but in livestock and grazing, extensive pastures, and so on. So we, as you know, eco schemes are 23% of our CAP budget. So it's more than 1,000 million euros every year. So it's a quite huge amount of money. And if you have a good needs analysis, it's not so difficult, to choose the best practices to offer to farmers. So in particular, we choose everything related with carbon farming, no-till on dry seeds, of course, conservation agriculture, and the establishment and maintenance of the green covers in the woody crops. For us, they are two very essential elements because we know the potential of conservation agriculture. And we have had a good experience in the last years about without this kind of, stimulation, farmers were going in this way. They were applying every year increases about 5% year from year of using conservation agriculture. And now we have the first data of what is happening with the new eco schemes. And we are very happy to say that 12.4 million hectares of agricultural surface, excluding pastures, of course, they have applied for one eco scheme. That means 84% of our surface. Of course, we don't have still data about which of them are doing only practices related with biodiversity, or they are applying, conservation agriculture. But even in woody crops, we have 2.4 million hectares that they have declared they are doing something related with green cover. So we are very hopeful that the way we have chosen is the right way.
Thank you very much. John, we've been talking about soils a lot since the beginning of the discussion, and clearly the core of conservation agriculture is the concept of soil as a living system. What do you think is the potential long-term are the potential long-term effects of adopting conservation or regenerative agriculture on soil health? How can it help? And also, what could it mean for the future of EU agriculture? I mean, we've just heard these scary figures from the JRC about soil erosion. So, how can these practices improve the overall EU agriculture approach? What kind of transformative changes can we expect?
Good question. Is this working?
Yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, it's very, very hard to overestimate the importance of soil. It's 2/3 of the total biodiversity of the planet is in soil. It stores almost all the water that we use, and it produces just about all the food that we eat. We know we are already in an era of climate uncertainty, and all of the trajectories are going in the wrong direction very, very fast. I don't know how we can meet the projected demands for food under these circumstances by 2030 without some kind of revolution in thinking, but more importantly, in action on the ground. So I think we need fundamental changes. I am obsessed with soil, which is probably why I'm here. But I'm also obsessed, my academic background is in dynamical systems theory. I'm a physicist. I'm interested in how complexity and systems work. And I recognize that soil is itself a system, and the plant is very much part of that. But that soil is at one end of a value chain that extends all the way through to the consumer. And one of the, and I maybe talk about it later, but one of the really positive pieces of the European, the direction of European policy is to take that whole systems perspective. Soil health, like human health, is not well defined. We don't understand human health. We don't understand soil health, but we know for humans, diet and lifestyle are kind of the two things to focus on. Good diet, healthy lifestyle. It's the same for soil. Those three principles are diet and lifestyle choices for soil. We know the evidence is clear, and the comprehensive whole system perspective given in the report is a very nice example about all of the co-benefits that soil health delivers, wherever soil health is. I would say a very good proxy for soil health is how much carbon there is in the soil, because carbon is a proxy for energy, and soil needs energy to maintain its physical and biological integrity. The co-benefits of soil health are profound: fresh water, clean water, drought tolerance, flood management, food production, reduction in emissions, increased sequestration. If you're going to do one thing to fix the climate and biodiversity crisis, and to some extent deal with food and water insecurity that is already happening and will continue to get worse, fix soil. But to fix soil, it doesn't stop with the farmer. The farmer, this is a very farmer-centric discussion so far as it kind of should be, because farmers are at the center of being able to make change on the ground, but they need to be supported by the whole value chain. And I would say that also farming is not just what goes on in the field where food is being produced, it's what goes on in the landscape. And to deliver the kind of transformation that we're talking about, we need to think about farming in the wider context of the landscape. Farmers manage landscapes. They're all good farmers are entrepreneurs. They're really clever. They're all the time doing experiments. They're all the time trying to do things better. They just need our help. The benefits of healthy soil are both public and private. And I believe the private sector needs to play a probably dominant role in this. We need market solutions that will work. And we need farmers to get paid more and paid for everything that they deliver, not just the food. Now, the top-down processes within the policy environment does, I think, a really good job. It's not perfect, but we cannot let perfect get in the way of making some progress. What I think is important, that we think more about the bottom-up processes and how communities and all of the stakeholders who have an interest in landscape transformation and soil health get together at a local, regional, and national scale to solve their own problems and get the necessary flow of resource, financial and intellectual resource, to support farmers to restore their soil and our landscapes and all of the co-benefits that delivers.
Thank you very much. I'd like to seize this opportunity to remind all of you, particularly if you're following us online, that you will have the opportunity to ask questions at the end of this discussion. So I don't know, but I think that if there are representatives of the farming community, either in the room or online, it would be very interesting to hear from you when we have this discussion. So just a call, an open call, since you have been mentioned already many times. Marie, I'd like to look with you at the Brazilian example, because, you know, as it's been said before, it's not just in the EU, it's really a global question. So how did the Brazilian no-till system Farmers Federation successfully integrate conservation agriculture practices to improve the biodiversity, and what can the EU learn from this example? I mean, you know, can you tell us more? Share your experience with us.
Okay, thank you, Florence. And just a correction, I'm from the Brazilian Federation, but I'm living in Portugal. So the Cidadania Nova is in Portugal. So now I'm dealing also with these two different realities. And in fact, Brazil, we are dealing with this conservation agriculture since 15 years, half a century. I'm daughter from a farmer that in 72, he began no tillage in South America. And he was called the crazy German that planted in the wheat, because he realized that he could not anymore lose his soil. That was his most important resource for farming. And so we are, since the 70 years now, working on the conception of conservation agriculture. It began just in the beginning with the no tillage, but with the academy, with research, we realized that if we have all three principles being followed, we have a lot of more benefits that goes to the health of the soil. But of course, there are 15 years that we are working on that, but it's not perfect yet. The biodiversity issue is yet an approach that the last 8-10 years farmers are recognizing that biodiversity is the main driving process in the soil. So if you have your soil with life and working, this life will lead you to the chemical and physical process that will lead to a better crop production, and then, of course, a chain reaction. So we have yet a lot of challenges in Brazil, but I think we are raising quite well. And the lessons that I think that we can bring to Europe, and that we saw as this organization of farming, is this, that we need, I think 2 points are important, and John already pointed them in some way. One thing is the awareness of the soil, how soil is important, not only farmers, but also for society. So I'm in Portugal, living for 4 years and working in the inland for 2 years. And I'm quite astonished how yet the soil has no importance for the society and for farmers. It's just a kind of substrate, and they use it to production with input of the fertilizer and everything. So we need to bring this awareness for all the society. And the other point is also some kind of views, like the definitions of cover crops. Now, cover crops we know that are good for fertilize the soil using the plants. But yet there are different views of it from what we do in South America and what is performed in Europe. In South America, for example, in Brazil, we have now, as the farmers has the awareness on the soil biodiversity, they know that they need to feed this biodiversity. And how you feed the biodiversity to begin this food web reaction in the soil is with plants. So, and plants, the diversification. We have farmers planting 8, 10, 15 species of cover crops just to feed the soil. They don't harvest these cover crops, they just throw it, they just keep it there to feed the soil biodiversity. And when I saw some places here in Europe, the cover crops, of course, it's a short time view from this process of fertilization of soil. So the farmers, they plant the cover crop, one species, so they harvest or they graze this cover crop, and after that they mobilize and incorporate it in the soil. So it's a quick reaction that they can help just in a small scale. So we need to it's important to see that we need to enhance this view in a medium long term. Otherwise, it's not possible to keep this system functioning. So I think maybe some points that we can really work, and farmers to talk to farmers. That is other point. So I know that sometimes the language is a problem. For 3 months ago, we talked around some people, we need some farmers in Brazil to talk in English, to say something, and we had some difficulty to do it. And we as decision makers and as academic, we need to help this communication, and also how we academic and the scientific people, how we talk to the farmers. So it's all an interaction group, as like is soil and nature as an interaction. Also, we need improve this interaction from the different actors and do it better and in an easy language.
To increase basically the awareness of farmers of all the benefits that are lying there. Would one of you like to comment on what Marie just said? Yes, John, please.
Is that okay? I just want to absolutely amplify that point that I've been part of a World Economic Forum Lighthouse project that took the challenge of trying to transform the European food system. And we've been asking ourselves, and the idea is a whole value chain solution. and bringing all of the private sector involved, but also public organizations together to try and figure out how to do that. And we spoke to farmers. The first thing we did was a survey of farmers across Europe to understand what's their level of awareness, what's their view of these kind of novel approaches, and the results were very interesting. Most farmers think that it's something that needs to be done, but they see it as a negative impact on their business. And they don't know how to do it or who to trust. They kind of trust each other more than others. They certainly don't trust many companies. They don't trust politicians. And they feel very remote from science, and science is very remote from farming. So the point being made about helping farmers talk to each other is something that's very close to my heart. We've been trialing some ideas of that in the UK and in Borneo, just to see if it works in very different environments. The issue of language, that can be dealt with. We have very clever tools that can do translation on the fly, so you can literally have chat groups communicating in different languages and understanding each other across the world. And given the principles are, the underlying principles are everywhere relevant, how they are realized locally, we can get started. But how do we learn by doing at a global scale? And how do we combine and how do we create new innovations by combining existing innovations? Basically, the economy works. Innovations are basically old ideas brought together in new ways. Farming can harness that on a global scale if we provide the tools to help farmers share ideas, create new innovations, share those innovations, get rewarded for those innovations. There really are no barriers to doing that now. And I'm very, very keen that we give farmers the agency. We support farmers to have that level of agency in their own future. And of course, underpinning all of that is data and the sharing of data, and farmers maintaining control of that data and how it is shared.
Yeah. Esperanza, yes, please.
I would like to,
yeah, because you were nodding, and I wanted to ask you about
Yes.
indeed talking to farmers. Is that something that you have been doing, and encouraging the dialogue from peer to peer, really, because that's how you build trust? It's true.
very, very interesting what Maria has said. I would like to point out one thing, making a little bit of self-critics with policymakers in Europe and in our country are doing. I think we have paid lots of attention to water and air, and not to soil. You know, from the point of view of what politics we have, you know, put in work in the last years. We have many legislative pieces about water, about air quality, polluters, but never we have paid attention to soil. I've been working in agriculture for 35 years. It's not a short while. So it's the first time we have seen in this Agri-Fish Council last Monday, we have started the discussions about the soil health law. You know, it's very important, and not to be, you know, not to put burdens or more complications to farmers, but to monitor and to know what's happening with soil all around Europe. So I think it's a good step. And the other thing you have said, the work with farmers, yeah, I think it's very, very important. What we have said in the last years, and of course Emilio knows it very, very well, is that this is, you know, like a drop of oil that must be spread, you know. It takes the time. But we need these advisory measures, these communications between the academia and the farmers, between the experts and the farmers themselves together too. We have, of course, a very fruitful cooperation with our national associations to make this kind of demonstrations, courses. We started here to try to make this soft rain work with farmers. The question is, to break inertias. This is my point of view. In farming in general, in livestock production, in agriculture production, in Spain, we have a lot of inertia. And the question is to break this inertia. And the other question that is not small, it's a very important question, is to help them do the necessary investments, because if you want to change, you need new machinery, you need some investments in your farm. And we think that this possibility we have had with the Next Generation Fund after COVID, for us is going to be, is being very useful. We have spent in the last year more than 120 million euros helping farmers to buy or to adapt their machinery to these more beneficial practices. So I think it's the very two questions that I would like to point out about what you have said.
Mary, you wanted to add something maybe to what John was saying earlier?
Yes, I think maybe of both. John, he raised the innovation. And innovation, I think it should be not in technology, but in the way of how to spread all this knowledge. And technology, we don't need innovation technology. We have a lot of knowledge that is not applied yet in agriculture. What we are saying here about conservation agriculture, there are not new things. The old civilizations, Greeks, they have a lot of these concepts already. They have already done it. We just need to put in practice what the human produced as information in an easy way. And then what was also raised regarding how to have a financial support or something like that. Just an example to you, in Brazil, we don't have subsidies in agriculture. And that was a point why CA grow up so much. The farmers, they need to survive. They need to produce with an environmental, with their soil having the function of production. So they needed to do better and also carrying the resource. And in some way here in Europe, the farmers, they are addicted to subsidies, and the subsidies, and sometimes they are not linked to the good agricultural practices. So there is some kind of politician organization that need to look how to deal with that and find new ways of get these subsidies available.
The never-ending question of the common agricultural policy. I don't think we want to open that page today. Otherwise, we'll still be here tomorrow. It's really Pandora's box. But Emilio, I'd like to hear your feedback on what we've been hearing from our three speakers, and maybe about the communication between farmers or with farmers, particularly in your case, for instance, in the preparation of the report. Or so, what's your approach?
My view is that in Europe, we farmers have the opportunity to have those subsidies. My view is that subsidies should be focused on results. For a long time, we've seen policies aiming at achieving some objectives, which in the end they were supporting practices that were not supported by the scientific community that would reach to those benefits. And I'm thinking of coming back to soils. There's been a huge amount of policies related to common agriculture policy aiming to reduce soil erosion, soil degradation, but the Joint Research Center tell us that we have still big problems with the soil. So maybe we should rethink how to design those policies looking for the scientific-based results. I think if politicians would come to scientific people, they would be, I would say, more supported in developing good policies. And Esperanza mentions, and I would like also to thank her for their trust in conservation agriculture in Spain, because we have 1,500 farmers in the National Association of Conservation Agriculture. We've developed many projects. We've demonstrated the system is working, but unfortunately, we were not very good at communicating, because until now, only few policies in the second pillar were supporting conservation agriculture. And now farmers have the opportunity. Of course, we know that policies could be improved. And of course, we would like to see not double, but triple figures supporting conservation agriculture per hectare in Spain. But in any case, it's this change towards conservation agriculture that has been initiated in this common agriculture policy in Spain, that we believe will come and will bring a lot of benefits in the future. And communication and training of farmers. We also, together with the farmer associations and group of farmers, local group of farmers of conservation agriculture in Spain, we've been organizing, also inviting colleagues from overseas. We've organized field days, and I remember the biggest one, 2,000 farmers joined in one day around conservation agriculture in different places in Spain. Every 2-3 years, we organize such big field days, 30 machines working at the same time in the field, and farmers get to know each other, and they share experiences. And I think that generosity among farmers is also essential for the development of the system. So basically, results. We look and we can provide with good results.
Thank you. John, you wanted to add something?
Just a quick point. I completely agree that the innovation, and I meant to be clear about this, the innovation is not about new widgets and gadgets. It's about doing clever stuff that farmers already do. Conservation agriculture is part of the practice, good best practice that is best tailored to local conditions. But I think we need to be careful in realizing that, yes, these practices have been around for 50 years or more, but in that time, the population of the earth has doubled. The middle class has grown massively. Our diet and demand on the food system has massively, consumption levels have massively increased. And I come back to the point, we've got 10 years to figure out how to avoid mass migration due to food insecurity. And I have not met anybody that has a practical answer that can be delivered at scale, fast, to address that issue.
Mm-hmm. So more cooperation clearly needed. I have received a question online, which I'm not quite yet going to open the floor, but I'd like to raise that question now, because I think it's important for the continuation of our discussion. Somebody online is asking what the difference is between conservation and regenerative agriculture. So Emilio, yeah, that's clearly one for you.
Thank you very much for the question. It seems like, well, in fact, if you go to definitions, and if you read the international body definition for regenerative agriculture, is basically principles of conservation agriculture. I was talking about results earlier. So I don't mind if you call it regenerative conservation agriculture. What we should look for is results. So basically, regenerative agriculture is conservation agriculture principle. It's minimum soil disturbance, permanent soil cover, crop rotations, plus integration of sustainable management of livestock, wherever it is. So it's basically, if you are a farmer, you don't have a livestock, you do regenerative agriculture through the principles of conservation agriculture. And that's a good point. In some occasions, I mean, you find different approaches, but I would say that that's the most accepted one.
Mary,
can I just
I see you're dying to say something.
Not dying, but just I always say it in my speeches, don't matter the name. What matters is we need to care the soil.
Yeah.
That's the point.
The focus is
and
clear.
the farmers, I don't matter if they do organic, intensive, conventional, they need to look to the soil, and we need to improve and to care soil. That's the main point of everything.
Very clear message. Esperanza, I'd like to come back with you, because we've heard a few examples of successful implementation, and you have mentioned several cases in Spain. But in the context of the Green Deal, if we're looking at the bigger picture that we talked about in the very beginning, and if we consider carbon neutrality and the need for a more sustainable agriculture, generally speaking, how do you think conservation agriculture as such can help achieve the objectives of the Green Deal? I mean, it has to be part of the bigger picture. You said that soil was discussed the other day at the council, so there seem to be a few steps that are made in the right direction.
Yes, of course. As I said before, I think conservation agriculture is in the core of the Green Deal, because it contributes to all the strategies that are around it, from these Fit for 55 are about reducing emissions. There's a biodiversity strategy that is part of the Green Deal too. Of course, water management and water, savings. The carbon sinks, reduction of pollution, because if you use less machinery, you reduce emissions of the work of the machinery, and all these things are really in the heart of the Green Deal. So as I said before, what we were missing in the Green Deal was more about soil, because we have a lot about air, a lot about water, and nothing about soil. So I think now we have the opportunity to keep the attention on soil, and as my colleagues and the experts know better than me, is that effectively soil is the main part of the main element to productivity, to produce food, and it must be part of the Green Deal too.
Emilio, you're nodding there.
Yeah, because it's we've missed it too, Esperanza, soil over the last year. I think last time the European Commission tried to bring soils 2006. We were part of this soil thematic strategy. Now it's coming back, and I would like to also build on what Marie has said, and it's the result and the focus. Sometimes we try to open the door to the more the better, but we know that some practices are harmful to the soil, and I'm talking about intensive tillage, and we see that systems and policies aiming at conserve soil are opening the door to intensive tillage, and that I think that should be considered as, let's think of a transition phase when we need to help train farmers to make the process of changing, because we know that this is not an overnight issue. We don't have a depleted soil, and we start with conservation agriculture, and the next season it's going to flourish and it's going to be fantastic. So this is not a fairy tale. Farming is not a fairy tale, and of course it takes time. So the key point here is to start walking in the right track, and I think that's what we need to start working on now.
Thank you. So I'm going to open the floor to questions. Yes, please, sir. I think the best thing we can do is give you one of those mics. Sorry. Thank you, Julio. And if you can introduce yourself, please, when you ask your question.
Yes. Hello, good morning. My name is José María Castilla, and representing ASAJA, Spanish Farmer Union. So it's very clear that you mentioned this morning that biodiversity well, it's a good way to protect the biodiversity and to improve it. So I want to make two questions. The first one is about the three pillars. I think that Esperanza, well, I know that Esperanza mentioned this morning 2 times. So, Emilio, do you think that the other 2 pillars, economic and social, are also covered by this kind of agriculture? And also, I have another question related about the eco schemes. That is another tool that you mentioned this morning. Do you know if in every single country here in Europe they approve also eco schemes related with this agriculture? Thank you so much.
About the dimensions of sustainability, we have proved in European projects that the 3 dimensions are covered with the 3 pillars of conservation agriculture. Jose Maria, the adaptation has been different, and I'm thinking of a project we worked in Spain, France, Germany, Denmark, and the UK, and in those countries, if I'm not wrong, we worked with 60 farms, commercial farms, owned by farmers, and we were monitoring around 30 basic indicators. Some of them related to productivity, to the economic side of the productivity of agriculture. Some of them related to the social dimensions. I'm trying to reduce the risk of abandonment of the activity, and some others related also, well, to the environment, of course. So I tell you, the results of this project were very positive, and I could openly say that conservation agriculture has a positive impact on the 3 dimensions of sustainability. And about the eco schemes, I will very briefly, since I'm also here today, not only as university but also as Secretary General of ECAF. Not all European countries are considering conservation agriculture, and that's something that well, even within ECAF we have annual meetings and we share experiences, and unfortunately the vision of the benefits is not the same in all European countries. There are some countries that well, I would say that the Spanish example will help other countries to follow the right, in my view, the right and the good path for developing policies.
Esperanza, I'd like to pick up on that particular point. Is that something that the presidency is working on?
Thank you very much. Yes, during our presidency, we are working on 2 files that are, I think, are very related with soil. And one of them I saw before, it's the health soil law. I think if I said law, somebody's going to say more burdens and more obligations for farmers. No, I want to say very clear that this law is trying to monitor, to follow up what is happening in the European soils, and afterwards try to design our practices like the eco schemes or other practices in conditionality or so on, practices adapted to what's happening in soils. So it's not something, burden cost or so on. But we have, first of all, we have to know what's happening in the different parts of the soil, because, of course, the problems of soil are very different, only in Spain from north to south, from east to west. So around Europe, it's quite bigger, this difference. And the other is about the carbon captures file. We are working in a new regulation that is trying to to analyze, first of all, because we don't have enough knowledge, how the different soils in the European Union and the different crops are acting as carbon sinks, and why or how farmers can benefit also from this activity. So I think there are two very important files. Of course, probably none of them are going to finish with our presidency. There are complex files that are going to follow, but they are very technical, but at the same time, very important to the future of, our health soil and our activity and our politics related to agriculture.
Thank you. Do we have, yes, please, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Gaston Funes. I am agricultural attaché at the Embassy of Argentina to the EU. Thank you, ECAF, for the invitation and for all the panelists. My question is in relation to, besides the biodiversity and the environmental benefits of conservation agriculture, but from the very business point of view, how do you think that farmers could be further rewarded by providing these ecosystem services? I mean, besides subsidies, which is not the case at all, for example, for Argentinian farmers. You know, more than 95% of Argentine agriculture and the main crops are under no-till farming. How can farmers be further rewarded through, I don't know, a global carbon market? I know that you are developing now the carbon farming strategy. So which global mechanism could be established for farmers to be better rewarded on this point?
John, do you want to take this one? Yeah.
I'll
Start at least.
Shall I have a go? So I've been thinking about this and actually working with corporate sector for the last 4 years now, asking this question, because I don't believe that farmers should have all the risks and not be also paid, that should not benefit from doing the right thing and actually farming the way that most farmers want to farm, right? Why can't they make money that way? The value chain has to play a major role in this. I think the value chain, there's some interesting lack of transparency exactly where the money goes in the value chain. Nobody says they're making money in the value chain, but I think demonstrably farmers are not making money in the value chain. And everywhere I work, farmers are getting roughly or less than half the income that everybody else is getting. So funnily enough, we're not getting new people coming into agriculture. Coming back to your point, the most interesting discussions I have with the private sector in this space is about brand protection. Most companies spend most of their budget protecting their brand. They don't want any surprises in their value chain in terms of social, slavery on farms or, the wrong kind of social and ethical practices on farms. They don't want to see environmental damage. They don't want to see climate practices that deteriorate the climate and biodiversity crisis. The issue is that the level of consumer pressure is not yet high enough, but it will come. And I think particularly with the greater transparency required on ESG and on the emissions along the whole value chain that are coming in the pipeline right now, could introduce that level of transparency that might make a difference, enough then for money to be found within the value chain to help farmers do the right thing and produce food in a way that creates a positive impact on society, on particularly the local economy, and on the environment. I think it comes down to pressure from board and shareholders and consumers. And part of that is raising awareness. Young demographic, 15 to 25, is the one to watch because they are very aware, very passionate, and they will start, of course, the next major consumer group. And I think that all eyes are on that group in terms of the big corporates who have brands to protect.
Thank you, Emilio.
Yeah, very short. I believe, and you have mentioned, I believe that carbon markets would be a key element for conservation agriculture development. My point is that they should be compatible with national initiatives already supporting soil conservation or whatever natural resource system, because otherwise it may disincentivize the shift, and you know that the shifting from an 20-30 year system to another one, a new one, it requires also kind of net for, well, I mean, if you commit a mistake, you make a mistake at during the transition, that you have some support. I think carbon markets, voluntary, regulated ones, would be a key element in the future and should be.
Thank you. Very, very briefly, Marie, maybe, is that a reward for farmers? Is that something that has been considered in your experience over the last 50 years in Brazil? I mean, not yours personally, clearly, you haven't been around 50 years, but, you know, looking at the outcome of those 50 years.
Yes, sure. The carbon issue is surrounding our federation since 2000, but we stopped because it has was good for the farmers. There was not. In the last years, we are improving the knowledge, also the data in soil to have this scientific information, to transform it in a form that the farmers can be benefited by it. But it is a process yet in Brazil. And there are from the Brazilian government, there are some kind of policies like the ABC plan, the ABC Plus, this is the last one, that they are the farmers together with the technician, they can submit projects that are different 7 lines, but if you look the lines, they are all related with conservation agriculture, with no tillage and no soil mobilization, so that the farmers can get some funding to enhance and to try to do better. And I'm personally, I have a more aggressive view in this. I think, yes, the farmers need help for the transition and how to go to this better. I like to use good farming practices that goes through conservation agriculture. But in other side, who is not doing well should also have some kind of not punishment, you know. I think we cannot admit yet that the worst things can be done.
Mm-hmm.
We need to see, that's not only for farming, that's for the whole society. We need to, yes, to ensure that good practices in any thing regarding environment and to our sustainability should be improved. But in other side, who is not doing well also need to kind of advise and awareness that they should change the way.
So
And
not
then,
just a carrot, but also a stick.
Yes, but they need a plan to carry them to the good practices.
Right. My final question will be a question that we have received online, and I'll direct it at you, Emilio, because it opens another door, but I think it's important to have an answer on this. Some of the practices that conservation agriculture proposes use integrated weed or pest management and the proper use of herbicides. What are the options for conservation agriculture if glyphosate is forbidden in the EU? So as I said, it opens another door, but a brief answer on this, maybe.
I think I was surprised that no question on glyphosate and conservation agriculture.
There you are.
That's the dossier. I mean, first, we hope since we trust very much the European Food Safety Agency and the European Chemical Agency as well. I mean, we encourage policymakers to take decisions based on science. If those agencies are supporting glyphosate or whatever product, we trust them, first thing. Second thing is that glyphosate in conservation agriculture is judiciously used. I mean, up to 95% of reduction of erosion, up to 70% on runoff, the improvement in the soil structure, all those benefits make, and all those, let's say, this new environment we create through conservation agriculture make that not only glyphosate, but whatever input applied in a conservation agriculture field is safely used, because we have a lot of microorganisms decomposing the input we apply, and therefore the potential risk of using that herbicide is highly reduced compared to conventional tillage. And unfortunately, we have a little conservation agriculture compared to conventional tillage in Europe. So I think we should think of that. If conservation agriculture was the common system in Europe, I'm pretty much convinced that we would have less problems, not only with glyphosate, but whatever input. Having said that, if we didn't have a glyphosate in conservation agriculture, some other herbicides might be used, because if we don't rely on tillage, on intensive tillage to control weeds, and we do have weeds, we need to control them somehow. So we need herbicides wisely used, and if we didn't have them, farmers would come back go back to plow their fields. In this sense, I would like to add as well that crop residues, crop diversification, the increase of biodiversity, as we have seen today, make that result in that weeds are less problematic in conservation agriculture system than in conventional tillage. Imagine that we have 1,000 of weed seeds, the weed seed bank in the soil. If we plow that soil, you know, the seeds we have 30 centimeters down 1 year will be on topsoil next year. So we will always have weeds and weeds and weeds. If we do no-till and with good ground covers, diversifying crops over time, the pressure of weeds is reduced, and we've seen that. And by the way, we have the university farm. He was converted to conservation agriculture more than 15 years ago, and we are using 1.2, 1.3 liters of glyphosate where needed. And why not? Precision farming, sensors. We don't have to spray the whole field. We can drastically reduce the use of herbicides if we add sensors in our sprayers. They detect where the weed is, they apply the control. We don't have to spray the whole field. So we have a lot of positive also results integrating weed management with the conservation agriculture principles.
Supported by the use of technology.
With the right technology and the right inputs, right products.
Thank you very much. Well, I think we have to close here our discussion, but thank you very much for joining us this morning. It was very interesting and very lively discussion, so thanks for that. And I'd like to invite Julio back on stage for a few concluding words on behalf of ECAF. You can grab a mic here, actually, if you... Oh, okay, you have a mic. That's perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I have some written words, but I think that's the important ideas of this brief panel discussion is the importance of soils and the relation of soil health with ecosystem services, biodiversity, water quality, air quality. So it's proved in this report that conservation agriculture helps to enhance soil health and the increase the preserve and increase soil biodiversity in agricultural ecosystems. And well, we have 2 points that I think is clear. One of them is soil management based on conservation agriculture should be a priority in the European policies. And also we have to take into account the perception of farmers. Farmers are the main actors on land management, and we should speak the same language that farmer does, but because it's important to spread this information, this technology, this knowledge. So thank you very much for all. I think it's a nice panel, and I hope all of you found this interesting discussion. Thank you.
So thank you very much all for joining us, whether in the room or online. It was a pleasure to have you with us, and I wish you a very nice rest of the day. Thank you. Bye-bye.